Hey guys, how are you doing today? In this video, I'm going to talk about ComfyUI updates. ComfyUI got updated yesterday, and we have quite a few updates. We have SD Turbo, StableZero, group nodes, and more features related to performance. This is the official ComfyUI blog, and as you can see, the update was December 19th. That was yesterday for me. And the first update we have is about SDXL Turbo. We have the workflows. Those were there from before, and you can read it from this link here. What we have new in this update is that we have an SD2.1 Turbo model, and this one is based on the SD2.1 model. You can download it from here. As usual, the model is hosted on Huggingface. Click on the download button and save it in your ComfyUI checkpoints folder. If you are not familiar with SDXL Turbo, I have a video here on the channel called How to Use SDXL Turbo in ComfyUI. Plus, I have another video that talks about a Gradio application I made for SDXL Turbo. You can watch both and you will learn more about the SDXL Turbo model. SD Turbo model is a distilled version of the Stable Diffusion 2.1, and it is trained on real-time synthesis. So it's not going to give you the best result out of the box. The community SDXL Turbo model is better, but hopefully the community takes this model and fine-tune it to have amazing results. Let's take a look at an example. Now click on the SDXL Turbo example page here. This will open the ComfyUI examples. Click on the image, drag it on top of your ComfyUI release, and you will have the SDXL Turbo workflow. Give it a quick refresh, go into the load checkpoint, and select the SD 2.1 Turbo model. You can leave everything else as default for SDXL Turbo, because this one will use the same key sampler, the same custom sampler, and we can click on Q prompt. So once the model is loaded, it took 2 seconds to generate an image 512 by 512 on my machine. Now keep in mind that I am using a GTX 1650 and I have only 4 GB of RAM. So if you're using a recent GPU, then you're probably going to get sub 1 second generation with it. However, the quality is not the same as SDXL Turbo. As you can see, the prompt here is the default one, the basic, a beautiful landscape with a fox inside the bottle. But we did not get the fox inside the bottle. We sort of got the fox here, but it's not really great. If we do the same example with the same seed with SDXL Turbo, I'm going to duplicate the workflow and change the checkpoint to SDXL Turbo. Leave everything the same, including the seed, and click on generate. So in my case, the SDXL Turbo took 4 seconds. That's 2 seconds extra. But now I have a better image, I would say. So this one is from SDXL Turbo, and the top one is from this new model, the SD Turbo or SD 2.1 Turbo. Now the issue I have with this model is that SDXL 2.1, pretty much all the 2.1 models, they are trained to work with negative prompts. And when we are making a Turbo model, the Turbo model does not utilize the negative prompt. We can take an example here. So I'm going to click on extra options, click on auto queue, and I will click on queue prompt. This will make ComfyUI keep listening to changes in the workflow. The moment we have a change, it will register it and it will execute the prompt. So if I go into the negative prompt, I put a comma, you can see queue size 1, and it is generating an image here. We got the same image. I can put a zombie here, it's generating, I get the same image. No matter what I put here, the SD Turbo model will not take the negative prompt into consideration. Therefore, we cannot really tell the model to remove things from the image. We can only use the positive prompt to influence the image. So I'm not sure how good SD2.1 Turbo is going to be, since the base model that was used for it, the Stable Diffusion 2.1, works best when we have a positive prompt and then when we have a negative prompt together. But it is an update. Hopefully the community can take it and fine-tune it to give us some amazing models. Next update is about the front-end improvement. And this one is a big one. We have group nodes. In my last video, I talked about how to make your own custom node here. And in that video, I show you how you can combine the positive and negative prompt into one. So I made this. A positive prompt is at the top, the negative prompt is at the bottom, using the custom nodes. Now, with the group nodes update, we no longer need to create our own custom node to combine nodes into one. We can simply go to ComfyUI, load any of your workflow. Let's say we want to recreate that positive and negative prompt into a single node. Just select the positive prompt, select the negative prompt, right-click on a blank area on your canvas, and then choose Convert to Group Node. Give it a name. I will say Prompts. Click on OK, and right away you have a node. This is a new node that contains the positive prompt, the negative prompt. And you can do this for any node. So if I load the default workflow, I can select everything, right-click on the canvas, click on Convert to Group Node, and I can call it Efficiency. Click on OK. And now I have my own version of Efficiency node. So if you're familiar with the Efficiency group of node, basically compact everything into one, and then you can generate images with it. Let me change the checkpoint model to SDXL Turbo, and I can click on Q prompt. And at the top here, it will tell you how many nodes we have in this and the position at which the progress is at right now. So right now it's at 0. It's basically loading the checkpoint. We are at 4, 5, 6. This is probably the key sampler. It's taking a while. We are at VA decode, the preview image here, and we have the image inside this one node. You can resize, you can do anything that you want with it. Pretty similar to how a traditional node would work. And previously I was doing this, so I was grouping each section into its own group. So I have a group for loader, one for prompt, sampler, VAE, and then output. This was utilizing the groups, but now we can simply grab everything and put it into one node. Now, in case you want to get back this node, this new node that you created, let me clear the canvas. You can right-click, click on Add Node, go to Group Nodes at the bottom, click on Workflow, and then you will have all of your group nodes that you've created. In my case, I've created the prompts and then efficiency. If I click on efficiency, I have this efficiency node now. The next update in the front end is about the undo and redo. So if I go here, let me load the default workflow. And let's say by accident, I've deleted the positive prompt. Before this update, I would have to go in, right-click, add a new clip text encode, and then connect everything. With this update, I can simply press Ctrl and Z on my keyboard, or Z, and it will undo the previous step so that I have my positive prompt back. And let's say I do not want the positive prompt, or maybe I've deleted the positive prompt, negative prompt, and now I want to undo. So I have the negative prompt here. I will undo once again, press Ctrl Z. But let's say I've changed my mind. I do not want the positive prompt. I can press Ctrl Y to redo. So it will go one step back. Okay, so these are shortcuts. They are standard shortcuts in pretty much all applications. But now we have it inside of ComfyUI, and it works for the nodes as well, not just text. Okay, moving on, we have one more front-end improvement. and this is about primary nodes. Let me load the default workflow again. I will change the step count to an input box. Click on it, drag it down, click on Add Node, Utils, and I will choose Primary now. So if you are making a workflow, and you may have heard about making buses, you create a section in your workflow that will contain all the primitives. So this will be your input for a step count, the seed, CFG, all of that will be here. Then you will use the reroute to send this over to different workflows, right? So we have our primitives and we send it to workflow here. One workflow is here, another is here, another is here. And you can reuse the same inputs for each of these workflows. However, the main problem that we had before is that these primitive nodes, they could not go through a reroute. But now we can. There is one little things that you need to keep in mind when using the primitive node and trying to reroute it. So if we want to reroute the model, for example, I'll click on the model, go here, select reroute, and we have a model reroute node here. You can right click on it and should type by default. This way we know that this is the model. Okay. Similarly, I can do it for the clip. It works like you would expect it to work. However, for the primitive node, if I click on the int, drag it out, and I select reroute, it doesn't connect. And I think this is not a bug, but more of a feature limitation, because this node here doesn't know what it's supposed to change into unless we have this line that is connecting it to the input field there. So in this case, we connect it to steps, so it knows that it's supposed to change itself or morph itself into an integer field. But when we send it over to a reroute, it doesn't know what it's supposed to convert into. So to use this correctly, you will need to select the input field, send that input field to a reroute. This way, the reroute knows that this is an integer. Then we send the input from that reroute to the output of the primitive in order to wire it correctly. So it's just that little step that you have to work backwards in order to get the reroute to work for primitive. I'm really happy about these 3 improvements. The front-end improvements is really good here. Next, we have a new model called StableZero123. And this is an SD1X model. It can generate images from different views. So if you give it an object from the front view, it will go ahead and generate the back view for it. And as you can see here, there's no positive or negative text input. It's simply an image checkpoint that has a clip vision embedded in it, and it knows what this image is. And it will just generate the backside of it. I'm assuming if you give it the backside, it will try to recreate the front side. Now I have the model downloaded here, but for me, when I click on Q prompt, I get an error that tells me that the header is too large. I'm not sure what this error is saying right now. If anyone of you know what this error is and how to fix it, please let me know. But based on the example, this is what it's supposed to do. Next, we have performance improvement. This is the FP8 support. It's basically how PyTorch works with different format. And we have 2 formats here. The author recommends using the FP8 if you are running out of memory. Usually, ComfyUI is really efficient when it comes to loading the checkpoint. But just in case you're having trouble and you want to try it, you can enter these values into the batch file. So let me show you. I'm going to copy these 2 values here. One is for the clip and one is for the model. So the one that says text encode is going to be for the clip, and then the one that says unit is for the model. You need both. Now, I am assuming most of you is using the portable version of ComfyUI. Then you will have your run NVIDIA GPU.bat or CPU. You need to right-click on the batch file, whichever one you're using. Go into Show More Options, then click on Edit. This will open it in Notepad. And then at the end is where you're going to paste those arguments, the FP8 for the model, and then the text encode. Then save it and try it out. Now, for those of you who want to experiment, there is Python 3.12 as well as Torch, or I should say PyTorch 2.3 that got releases, and you can update to those Python version or PyTorch version and then see if you have any improvements. You're mostly going to look for generation speed. Now, next we have the self-attention guidance, and this one is still in the testing category. I'm going to use the default workflow here, but you can use any workflow for testing. And the way that the self-attention guidance work is that it's supposed to make images sharper and more consistent. However, it's at the cost of a slower generation. So right-click on an empty canvas, click on Add Node, and you will go into the For Testing section or category. Then select the self-attention guidance from there. And this one is very simple. It takes a model and it outputs a model. So for testing purposes, I'm going to bypass the self-attention guidance, change my seed to fix, and I'm going to put a close-up portrait of a girl. This model is mainly trained on anime characters. And then in negative, I'll put some safeguard text and click on Generate. So right now, I'm not using the self-attention guidance node. It's the old traditional node. It's going from model directly into key sampler. Okay, it's done. And this is the image that we got. I'm going to add a load image node here. I would right click on the output image, click on copy clip space, and then go into the load image, right click and click on paste clip space. This will save a copy of this output. Then I would enable the self-attention guidance and click on QPrompt. So this time I'm going from model, so load checkpoint, to self-attention guidance. And this new model is getting sent to the key sampler. So it's completed. On the left, we have the self-attention guidance one. And on the right, we have it without the self-attention guidance one. And there's very little differences between these two. So if I open both of them, you can see this is the without and with. Without, with, and yes, there's a change, but I'm not quite sure about whether it's making it better or not. They both look the same to me personally, and this is odd, so it's subjective. Everyone has their own opinion. Let me know what you think about it, if it is improving the image or it's not really worth it. In terms of generation speed, without the self-attention guidance, it took me 40 seconds to generate an image, but with the self-attention guidance, it took 1 minute 11 seconds to generate. Now, this is experimental, but I will personally not be using it. It's almost 30 seconds of extra time for me, just for little change. Now, next we have the prep negative. And again, this is also experimental. In order to use it, right-click, add node, go into for testing, and you will have the prep negative at the bottom. Now, this one is a little bit weird because you need to have an empty conditioning sent over to the empty conditioning field. Then you take the model, send it to the model, and this model, the output, goes into the key sampler. I'm going to remove the self-attention guidance one, and let's generate So it's supposed to make the images more consistent by making the negative prompt have more precise effect. And again, it's going to be at the cost of a slower generation time. I have the same seed here, and we'll see if it's going to make the images better or not. It's completed. On the left side, we have the prep negative node, and on the right side, it's the image without the node. And it's a totally different image. So it's taking the negative prompt that we have here, and it's making the negative section more prominent. And we can see here it's a totally different image. But in my opinion, this left side is better than the right side. The left side is with the prep negative node. But this is just one generation. And if we look at the terminal, it took 1 minute, 6 seconds for me to generate that image, while without it, it was 39 seconds. So that's about 25 seconds extra in order to get this image. Again, this is experimental and it's completely subjective. Use it, experiment with it, and let me know if these two nodes are worth it. Next, we have a new model called SegMind Vega model. And this is supposed to be used similar to your SDXL based checkpoint. So I have a basic workflow here where I have the SDXL SegMind Vega as my checkpoint. Then the update also suggests to use an LCM LoRa in order to get images faster. So we can use a low CFG and a low step count. I am using the LCM LoRa SDXL for SDXL. So the model is an SDXL model. Then I'm going into the model sampling discrete using the sampling method LCM. Using a positive and negative, I'm using 5 steps and a low CFG of 1.8. The sampler name is also LCM. Now, once I'm generated, this is the image that I got, and it's not bad. When I change the prompt to a character, this is what I got. Now, the same prompt with SDXL would have given me better result with the base model plus the refiner. But for me, it would take me about 8 to 12 minutes to generate an image. This one took me about a minute, but the quality of the image is not great. So again, experiment with the model and let me know if you got better result. Now, next we have a save animated PNG node. So if you've been doing animation, most likely you're saving your animation as WebP, but now we have a new node that's called save animated PNG that can save in PNG format. So it's going to be like GIF or GIF, where the images will go one after the other. And here's an example. I was trying it with a couple of images, and as you can see, just take all the images. Depending on the frame rate, it's going to do this or this. This one is from a slower frame rate. I have only 4 frames, as you can see at the bottom. There are 4 images, and this one is 4 frames, but with a higher frame rate. Now, of course, these images are not to be used to make some kind of video, but if you have consistent images, then you can make sort of video. Now, next we have performance update. So we have a deterministic that can be used, and we have a GPU only that you can use. Again, these are arguments, and the way that we'll use it is by going into your batch file, click on edit, and then you will add these arguments here. And this was the final update on the ComfyUI blog for this year. We've got the SD2.1 Turbo. The front-end improvements, I think, is, for me personally, the most valuable. The group nodes, really amazing. Rerouting the primitive nodes, again, really good. And then functionality, the Control-Z and Control-Y for undo and redo is really good as well. The different models that we got is subjective. as well as the testing, the experimentation for self-attention guidance and the prep negative. They do come at a cost of slower generation time, but the prep negative gave me a better result. The self-attention guidance, for me, the difference is barely visible, and some minor changes, as well as the save animated PNG in case you're doing animation and you want to have a PNG version instead of a MP4 or WebP format. So that was it for the update. Thank you for watching until the very end. Let me know how you feel about these updates. I would like to say a big thank you to all of you guys. So the channel has reached 2.0K, so that's about 2,000 views, and the watch time is about 114 hours right now. And this is really amazing. Reaching the end of year, I never expected to reach these numbers. And also a big thank you to all of you who subscribe. Currently at 95 subscribers. So hopefully by end of year, the channel can reach 100 subscribers. That's going to be huge for me. Big thank you. Really appreciate your support, guys. I will see you in the next one.